March 2nd, 1965. Dawn broke crimson over Thailand's jungles. Young American pilots climbed into cockpits, 80 pounds of survival gear crushing their shoulders. None understood they were beginning the longest, most futile bombing campaign in history. Downtown Hanoi waited beneath dark clouds. Thunder was coming. Close your eyes. Imagine climbing into your fighter, knowing statistics predict death. 60% survival rate after 100 missions north. Every fifth pilot never returns. Would you strap in? Would your hands shake on the throttle? Would you pray before engines start? President Johnson believed precision aerial bombardment would shatter North Vietnam's will within mere weeks. He miscalculated catastrophically. 3 years, 8 months. 900 American aircraft obliterated. Rolling Thunder became a mechanized cavalry charge into Death's Valley, repeating daily without strategic purpose or conclusion. 104 American aircraft launched the inaugural strike against ammunition depots near Zom Bang village. 6 were obliterated immediately by anti-aircraft fire. 5 pilots rescued from jungle. 1 vanished forever into captivity. Mission planners finally understood this war would devour men and machines endlessly. Captain Michael Brazelton remembers his F-105 Thunderchief, screaming at 860 knots, treetops blurring beneath. The double-layer canopy glass began melting from friction heat. Jungle became abstract smear of green. Speed meant survival. Speed was the only prayer worth believing in war. Republic Aviation never designed the Thunderchief for sustained conventional warfare. They built it delivering 1 nuclear weapon at supersonic velocity, then accepting probable destruction. Instead, pilots flew these machines daily through concentrated hell, returning with missile fragments embedded in aluminum wings, hydraulic fluid bleeding from punctured systems. Pilots nicknamed their aircraft Thuds, perhaps honoring Chief Thunder Thud from Howdy Doody television, perhaps mimicking the sickening sound Thunderchiefs made impacting Vietnamese earth. The name became badge of honor, dark joke, funeral prayer. Thud drivers supposedly feared nothing. They lied to themselves constantly about fear. I slept in a hooch at Tockley, 16 metal beds, communal washroom, porcelain sinks crawling with crickets, no air conditioning despite brutal heat. Mosquito netting our only defense against malaria. I preferred this rough communal existence. Living alone while flying combat missions was psychological torture. Nobody survived intact. You wake at 0:30. Eat breakfast with men who might die before sunset. Study maps showing targets politicians selected over White House lunch yesterday. Strap 80 pounds of survival gear onto trembling body. Walk toward your machine, knowing odds worsen daily. Engine start becomes prayer. The F-105 was genuinely massive. Vertical stabilizer, 19 feet tall. Fuselage length nearly matching a B-17 bomber. Largest single-engine jet fighter America ever committed to war. 1 man controlling devastating firepower. 1 fragile human facing 7,000 enemy guns aimed skyward, waiting patiently. Ground crews carefully removed red flag safety pins from bombs at the ordnance loading pit. 750-pound bombs clustered under wings. Sometimes 3,000-pound monsters that Guild cherished, not for destroying bridges, but obliterating concentrated flak positions with earthquake blast waves that silenced guns permanently. Every mission commenced with aerial refueling over neutral Laos. KC-135 tankers flew endless 30-mile racetrack patterns. Thuds cycled through twice, outbound, then again before penetrating enemy airspace. Half your fuel consumed before glimpsing targets. No margin for combat maneuvering, missile evasion, navigation errors, or survival. The North Vietnamese always knew we were coming. Captured intelligence documents revealed 30 to 45 minutes advance, warning for nearly 90% of strikes. Our radio traffic patterns, logistics chatter, ordnance loading communications, weather reconnaissance flights, refueling tanker deployments created unmistakable signatures. Tactical surprise proved impossible. They waited prepared. President Johnson personally selected individual targets during White House lunches with Defense Secretary McNamara. They examined bridge photographs, approved factory strikes, declared power plants forbidden. Orders cascaded through Byzantine command chains from Washington to Saigon to Thailand bases. Micromanagement from 7,000 miles away guaranteed tactical failure. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Broughton confronted impossible constraints. Nothing within 30 nautical miles of Hanoi's center could be attacked. 10-mile protective radius surrounded Haiphong, 20 to 30 miles along Chinese border. Absolutely forbidden territory. Fight the most sophisticated air defense network ever created with one hand tied. Soviet freighters systematically unloaded surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft guns, ammunition at Haiphong docks every single day. American pilots orbited above, watching helplessly. Forbidden to attack. Mining Haiphong harbor could have terminated everything. Johnson refused, terrified of Soviet retaliation escalation. Supplies flowed uninterrupted southward into Hanoi's arsenal. Enemy airfields remained absolutely forbidden, while MiG fighters sat parked in neat, vulnerable rows. American pilots could defend themselves if attacked airborne, but not destroy enemy fighters on ground. Surface-to-air missile sites under construction remained protected sanctuaries. Only active firing sites became legitimate targets after they had already killed Americans. Washington called this strategy gradualism, threatening total destruction rather than delivering it. Political theorists believed holding important targets hostage while bombing insignificant ones would demonstrate American determination, forcing negotiation. The North Vietnamese used these delays building the world's most sophisticated integrated air defense network instead. Strategy failed completely. North Vietnam possessed approximately 1,500 anti-aircraft weapons in early '65. 12 months later, over 5,000 guns, including radar-directed 85 and 100mm artillery cannons. Final estimates reached 7,000 weapons. 80% of American aircraft losses came from conventional anti-aircraft artillery, not sophisticated missiles. Captain Ed Razimus describes standard attack geometry. Altitude hold engaged, autopilot flying, cruising comfortably at 18 to 20,000 feet, then sudden dive toward targets accelerating to 600 knots. 4G pull upward, 4G pull downward, release ordnance at precisely 3,000 feet, pull 4Gs recovering. Everything hurt simultaneously. Recovery pull demanded 4 to 5 Gs at merely 1,000 feet altitude. Bombs released. Aircraft screaming away from erupting firestorm below. Vision grayed at periphery from G-forces crushing blood from brain. Then, desperate egress. Every pilot for himself. Afterburners ignited. Fuel consumption irrelevant. Survival was everything. Guild remembers following Thud Ridge, the mile-high karst limestone mountain spine, pointing toward Hanoi, like God's accusing finger. Fly south. Guns from Pu Tho Valley hammered you mercilessly. North side brought concentrated fire from another fortified valley. The ridge itself provided brief, blessed sanctuary from crossing fire. Pilots nicknamed Hanoi Downtown, echoing Petula Clark's 1964 song promising everything's waiting for you downtown. Flak, surface-to-air missiles, MiG fighters, death, everything waiting. Pilots sang the tune ironically in officers' clubs after missions, drunk, laughing too loud. Dark humor maintained sanity barely intact. First Lieutenant Carl Richter was merely 24 years old when he completed 100 missions from Korat Air Base. Then, he volunteered for 100 more missions into hell. Near tour's end, flying into PAK-1 airspace, he died. What psychological forces drive young men back into death? Superstitions accumulated like psychological armor against chaos. Australian bush hats tallied missions on rims, never left on beds or furniture. At Korat, mustaches rendered pilots magically bulletproof. Shaving meant certain death. Crickets in washrooms became sacred totems. Logic fled combat zones. Magical thinking prevailed as rationality crumbled. July 24th, '65. 4 Navy F-4 Phantoms struck munitions depot west of Hanoi. One exploded catastrophically in midair. First American aircraft destroyed by Soviet SA-2 surface-to-air missile technology. Das terrible portent of escalation ahead. The technological game had changed forever. Russians entered the war. President Johnson authorized retaliatory strikes against missile sites 3 days afterward. The sites were elaborate traps, white-painted bamboo bundles disguised as missiles, surrounded by concentrated anti-aircraft artillery ambushes. 6 strike aircraft obliterated. Pilots captured, killed, missing. One survivor called the experience apocalyptic, unrepeatable, unsurvivable. Wild Weasel crews flew 2-seat F-105F variants ahead of strike packages, actively hunting surface-to-air missile sites. They carried sophisticated sensors detecting enemy radar emissions and AGM-45 Shrike anti-radiation missiles that homed on active radars. Deadly cat-and-mouse game between determined hunters and cunning prey. North Vietnamese radar operators learned effective counter tactics within weeks. Point tracking radar sideways, then shut it completely off. The primitive Shrike missile followed beam away from launcher, lost guidance signal, crashed harmlessly into jungle. False launches transmitted guidance signals without actual missiles. Americans jettisoned bombs dodging non-existent threats. Soviet technical advisors upgraded SA-2 radar systems repeatedly to resist American electronic jamming. They introduced passive guidance mode, missiles homing directly on powerful American jamming signals themselves. Turn off tracking radar. Shrikes cannot find you. Soviet ingenuity matched American technology step for step throughout entire campaign. Major Michael Cooper worried constantly about close friends enduring torture in Hanoi's prison camps. Good men experiencing hell beyond imagination. He thought about them during every mission briefing, every bomb run. Of 207 fighters shot down over North Vietnam, 99 were Thunderchiefs. The Thud community bled continuously. April 3rd, 65. North Vietnamese MiG-17 fighters appeared suddenly over Thanh Hoa Bridge. They shot down an F-8 Crusader while losing 1 aircraft themselves. Next day brought classic dogfights, F-100s and F-105s against multiple MiGs. Sustained aerial combat had begun in earnest. American pilots were genuinely shocked when antiquated MiG-17 fighters successfully shot down supersonic Crusaders and Thunderchiefs. The communist fighters were barely fast enough for hit-and-run ambushes, yet maneuverable enough for killing. Americans developed new defensive tactics desperately, frantically. The learning curve was written in aviator blood. The simple appearance of MiG fighters accomplished strategic missions without firing single shots. American pilots jettisoned expensive bomb loads defensively to increase aircraft maneuverability. Lightened machines enough for dodging attacks. Missions aborted wholesale. Targets survived undamaged. Hanoi's defensive strategy worked perfectly, economically. By 67, Vietnam maintained approximately 100 interceptors, many based on Chinese airfields beyond American political reach. Superb ground controllers positioned MiGs in perfect ambush stations routinely. Head-on attacks by MiG-17s, rear hemisphere attacks by supersonic MiG-21s. Guerrilla warfare adapted brilliantly for air combat. December 66. MiG-21 pilots from elite 921st Fighter Regiment shot down 14 American F-105s without suffering losses. Fast, devastating attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Force some Thuds dropping bombs prematurely. Disengage rapidly before American retaliation arrives. Tactical perfection achieved through discipline. January 2nd, 67, Operation Bolo, American F-4. Phantoms mimicked F-105 formations perfectly. Identical radio call signs, approach directions, altitudes, speeds. MiG-21s took bait eagerly, expecting easy prey. 7 MiGs destroyed within 12 violent minutes. No American losses. Turnabout was fair play. Despite Operation Bolo's success, kill ratios remained brutally balanced overall. From May through December 66, America lost 47 aircraft in aerial battles, destroying merely 12 enemy fighters. The technologically superior force was losing decisively to determination, superior tactics, and overwhelming home field advantage. Lieutenant Colonel Gene Basel described Tockley's infamous pressure bar ritual. Pilots returning from downtown missions ran gauntlets of hurled beer bottles, desperately trying reaching the far wall, nicknamed Thud Ridge, unscathed. Impromptu wakes for lost comrades, drinking far more than medically advisable. Exhaustion compounding with unprocessed grief. Cooper desperately tried getting 6 to 8 hours sleep before missions. 100 missions in 6 months meant approximately 16 sorties monthly. Every 16 days brought 4 days off duty. He made Bangkok the center of his diminishing universe. Brief escapes from omnipresent death stalking every morning. Gild's primary memory of Tokli remains brutally simple, being tired constantly. Not merely physical exhaustion, but soul-deep weariness penetrating bone marrow. The accumulated weight of flying into concentrated hell repeatedly. Watching friends die randomly, knowing grim statistics predicted your turn would inevitably come eventually, perhaps tomorrow morning. Some pilots quit when psychological reality finally struck. One young pilot was shot down on his inaugural mission, miraculously rescued, returned to base, walked directly into headquarters, handed in his wings. No shame existed. The Thud experience demanded more than some men could possibly give without destroying themselves. Of 9 pilots in training class, 6 weeks ahead of Razimus at Nellis Air Force Base, 4 died in combat. The first short course class of universally assignable pilots lost 15 out of 16, killed or captured within months. 3 of 5 pilots starting combat tours never completed them alive. The North Vietnamese prepared systematically for apocalypse. February 65, directive to military and civilian population. Maintain communication and transportation networks. Expect complete destruction of entire country, including Hanoi and Haiphong. Every citizen became soldier. Every village became fortress. Total war was coming. All except those truly indispensable to capital survival were evacuated to countryside. By 67, Hanoi's population had been deliberately reduced by half. Remaining citizens lived underground in tunnels, emerging only when silence suggested temporary safety. An entire subterranean nation at war with superpower. The northern economy systematically decentralized for protection against strategic bombing. Large factories in heavily populated Red River Delta were broken up, scattered into caves and remote villages throughout countryside. In southern Panhandle, entire villages moved into elaborate tunnel complexes for war's duration. 97,000 North Vietnamese civilians volunteered working full-time in 65 repairing bomb damage continuously. Another 370 to 500,000 worked part-time reconstruction. Railroad supply trains split into smaller elements traveling exclusively at night. The logistics system proved remarkably durable, impossible to permanently shut down. Citizens on sampans, driving ox carts, pushing wheelbarrows, or carrying supplies on backs kept war effort functioning despite bombing. They were motivated by propaganda slogans. Each kilogram of goods is a bullet shot into the head of American pirates. Logistics became people's war, impossible to stop. Brazelton was attacking 120mm anti-aircraft site north of Hanoi on August 7, 66, dropping cluster bombs. 57mm shell penetrated his belly fuel tank. He rode the dying, burning Thunderchief briefly, then ejected into captivity. 6.5 years as prisoner of war followed. When someone got hit, and someone almost always did downtown, Thuds kept moving relentlessly forward. In PAK, 6th airspace, if pilot went down across Red River, formation continued toward target, staying pinpointed down man's location for enemy. No rescue attempted until later. Cold mathematics of survival. In 66, if pilot wasn't rescued within 90 minutes of being shot down, he wasn't coming out alive or free. The clock started immediately upon ejection. Every second mattered desperately. Search and rescue helicopters escorted by A-1 Sky Raiders fought through defenses courageously. Most rescue attempts failed bloodily. April 65. Joint Chiefs persuaded McNamara and Johnson, launching 4-week concentrated attack on North Vietnam's lines of communication. 26 bridges and 7 ferries destroyed. Extensive radar systems, barracks, ammunition depots, targeted systematically. First-time military significance outweighed psychological signaling. Real war beginning. Destroyed bridges were repaired overnight or replaced by improvised dirt fords, ferries, underwater pontoon bridges invisible to reconnaissance. The transportation system proved remarkably resilient against strategic bombing. American intelligence admitted failure repeatedly in classified reports. Interdiction didn't work. Supplies continued flowing south to Viet Cong, insurgency uninterrupted. June 29, 65, airstrikes against petroleum, oil, and lubricant storage areas finally authorized by Johnson personally. American military leadership believed denying North Vietnam, POL would halt military effort entirely. Initial strikes appeared highly successful, destroying massive tank farms near Hanoi, Haiphong. CIA estimated 70% of North Vietnam's oil facilities destroyed in opening strikes. 43 aircraft lost achieving this. But Hanoi had anticipated campaign, dispersing pole stocks in 50-gallon drums across entire country. September 4th. Attacks halted. No evidence whatsoever of any pole shortages affecting operations. By Christmas 65, 180 American aircraft lost during campaign, 85 Air Force, 94 Navy, 1 Marine Corps. 8 South Vietnamese aircraft also lost. Air Force crews flew nearly 26,000 sorties, dropped 32,000 tons of bombs. Strategic effect, negligible, perhaps counterproductive. 67 and 68 became campaign's final, desperate evolution. Almost all targets on Joint Chiefs' original list authorized for attack, including previously forbidden airfields. Only central Hanoi, Haiphong port, and Chinese border area remained prohibited. The gloves came partially off. Escalation continued its deadly logic. Thai Nguyen steel complex struck. Thermal and electrical power plants bombed. Ship and rail repair facilities targeted. Warehouses destroyed systematically. North Vietnamese MiGs entered battle en masse as their capital faced destruction. American kill ratios fell to 1 friendly aircraft for every 2 MiGs destroyed. Losses mounting. During 68, MiGs accounted for 22% of 184 American aircraft lost over north. 75 Air Force, 59 Navy, 5 Marine Corps. As a result, operations against North Vietnam's last airfields, previously forbidden sanctuaries, were finally authorized, too late for strategic effect. January 30th, 68. Despite Rolling Thunder's best interdiction efforts, North Vietnam and Viet Cong launched Tet Offensive, their largest operation of entire war, striking simultaneously throughout South Vietnam. Military disaster for Hanoi, but it adversely affected American public opinion critically. Political war was lost. 3 years, 8 months. Over 864,000 tons of bombs and missiles dropped on North Vietnam, 152,000 Navy and Marine attack sorties, 154,000 Air Force attack sorties, roughly 900 American aircraft destroyed, approximately 1,000 personnel killed or captured. November 1st, 1968. Operation Rolling Thunder officially ended by presidential order. North Vietnam's will remained completely unbroken despite unprecedented bombing. Their transportation system functioned adequately. Supplies continued flowing south. The most intense air-ground battle of Cold War had accomplished virtually nothing strategically. Futility complete. Basel walked streets afterward, grieving for the dead, for those who returned broken, for himself. He asked the question haunting every survivor: what was it all about? This magnificently orchestrated event that accomplished nothing meaningful. We became casualties of monstrous charade. For what purpose? Some pilots returned for second tours, 100 more missions in F-4 Phantoms. Not to finish thwarted work, not for patriotism alone. They returned for adrenaline rush, camaraderie, exhilarating life spent on knife edge, doing work only brave men can do. Addiction to fear itself. 104 years after British Light Brigade charged into Russian guns at Balaclava, American pilots repeated tragedy daily over North Vietnam. Same courage, same sacrifice, same strategic futility. History doesn't repeat precisely, but it rhymes. The thunder finally stopped, echoing forever in survivors' nightmares.